Hey everybody, I'm Mike Jones. I'm a retired Texas police officer.
G'day everybody, I'm Pete Gillett and I'm a retired New South Wales policeman. G'day Mike, great to see you again, bro.
Hey Peter, good to see you, buddy. It's been a week, but it just seems like it's flown by, man. I
Yeah,
get excited to do these podcasts.
yeah, same here. It's a great thing. I marvel all the time at technology and it's. Hey, what's on your top? What's on your
Right
top?
here.
Yeah.
So that's an emblem that says Second Amendment. You're an American, act like it. So Second Amendment to us is the right to bear arms,
Wow.
and
Okay.
they
Yeah.
keep trying to take away that right every seems like every political season. They want to take away the right of the Second Amendment,
Ah.
and
What's the
so
First
I'm a
Amendment?
First Amendment is freedom of speech.
All right. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
our Prime
So
Minister's fixing to take ours away.
mm,
Very, I
yeah,
mean, it's tenuous times for us Westerners.
yeah. Here in the States, they have to have it, they have the president couldn't do it. It has to be Congress, and everybody's got to agree to it. There's a certain percentage. I think it's 75%
Ah,
of the politicians have to go along with it.
mm.
Don't quote me on that, but so one man can't just say, okay, no more. You're not allowed to carry weapons or whatever. I don't think it'll never happen in my lifetime. I'll tell you that. It,
Oh,
it just
I-
won't.
hard to see how it could ever happen. I mean,
Yeah, we have
if you lived to be 400, I couldn't see that happening. Nah.
no,
How
no.
did you,
That's what we're built on.
it's I just think, mate, worldwide it's a tenuous time. I know that every generation's probably said the same thing, but I'm not happy with the way that the world's turning politically and how Westerners are being suppressed and our morals and our worldview is being suppressed. That makes me tremendously angry, like
Yeah,
especially being the son of a World War II veteran. It's just disgusting. But anyway, I was wondering if you could tell us about that coat on the wall behind you.
yeah. Let me bring it closer here.
Yeah. Mm.
Got to put my ears back on so I can hear you.
Mm.
So this is a leather flight jacket.
Oh.
Yeah. So I got this in the late '70s, maybe early '80s. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the last squadron I belonged to was the VMFA 112 Cowboys. This is a squadron patch. You
Sounds
always
cool
wear your
already.
yeah. So we have a famous football team here in Dallas called the Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys.
Even I've heard of it, mate.
Yeah. So because our squadron is here, it's called the Cowboys. It used to be called the Wolf Pack back in the World War II.
Wow.
And then on this side, on this right sleeve, United States Marine Corps, obviously. And
Uh,
then the McDonnell Douglas Phantom 2, which is the F4. And then it has my name here,
uh,
MAG 41, which is the Marine Corps Air Group 41, USMC, and then a F4 right here, and the United States flag on the left sleeve. This is all standard. I mean, you can't just decide you're going to put something somewhere. It has to be all within regulations. And then on the inside of on the jacket here, you can see it's stamped out USN. I say stamped, but it's actually perforated. I don't know if you can see that or not. You
yeah, yeah,
kind of,
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
why is
So
it
this is,
perforated?
yeah, I don't know why they do that, but it makes it authentic, you know. Um, so this was, so this is to answer one of the guys' questions for me. Talk about whether I was a pilot or whatever. So I wasn't a Marine Corps pilot. I'm a private pilot, but I didn't
Oh,
fly F4s, but I flew in the back seat of F4s. And in the
wow.
Marine Corps, we didn't have a stick in the back seat. Um, So what would happen is, so I started out as a hydraulics mechanic for uh for the A4 and then the F4, and um that includes landing gear, any movable service on that airplane. All the flight controls are all hydraulic,
Mm.
and so I was a hydraulic. They call it hydraulic pneumatic mechanic. That's what I started at.
Wow. Wow.
Think, and then so after about 2 years of doing that, then they promoted me into what they call a troubleshooter for hydraulics and flight controls. And we had a building on the flight line where all the airplanes, we had 12 F4s in my squadron. And all Marine Corps squadrons had 12 F4s. We had, back in the late 70s, we had a little shed like out on the flight line. And we had a guy in there that was from avionics, and we had a guy in there that was from radar. We had a guy in there that was from the ejection seat shop. And so all the shops that worked on this airplane had one person that was out there, and it was called the troubleshooters.
Wow.
So when the pilots would walk out, they start their airplanes up and they have a problem. Let's say hydraulically, they have an issue. Then, we as troubleshooters would figure out what that issue was, fix it so that we could get them out there and into their mission. So you had to know what you were doing.
Mm.
But that being said, all of us out there were also backseat qualified, is what it's called, where we had to go to physiology and do we had to do everything it takes that a pilot would have to do, physiology wise, aviation physiology wise. The altitude chamber. We had to learn ejection seats. We even had to eject in a controlled environment inside this building. There was an ejection seat, so you would have to eject. So get that muscle memory of what it takes to
Oh,
eject out of a high performance aircraft. So I probably have over, and I'm going to guess maybe 300 hours in the backseat of an F4.
that's just
So
so
when they would,
cool.
yeah.
How
So
good
when
is
they would, and you're talking about a kid that's 21 years old.
that? Wow.
And when the pilots would go out, if they didn't already have a back seat, and we called them RIOs, rear intercept officers. If they didn't have one for this whatever mission, then we could jump into the back seat, and we had all the flight gear. We were issued flight jackets and flight suits, and
Mm.
uh, we had the qualifications that we could ride in the backseat of an F4. And so we would fill that void in there. And
Oh,
there's some buttons and some levers in the backseat of an F4 that 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 the pilot could tell you, hey, do this, do that.
if you
This is
had
what
to
I,
eject, was the eject for both people in the plane?
well, it there was a choice.
Right.
It depended on the pilot.
Yeah.
When
If he
you
liked you or
before
not.
you ever, what's that?
If he liked you or not.
Well, yeah, there was a lever that you could turn that was command eject, and that would eject both seats. The back seat would go first, and then the front seat would go. And there was also single ejection seat. So it depended on the pilot. What he might not want you in the back seat with command eject authority, and you get scared and you eject, and
Oh,
he's going to go too. you know?
yeah, right. Okay. Right.
Uh,
Just last night, my wife and I were out at the local brew house, and I had a brief conversation with a young man who is just 18 years old, and he's in the process of becoming a pilot. And anyway, and I said to him, "Do you know?" I didn't prefix it all. I said, "Do you know do you know the name of Buzz Aldrin? Do you know the name Buzz Aldrin?" And he was thoughtful. He said, "Yeah, I've heard the name." And I said, "Well, he was the second man on the moon back in 1969." And he do you ever remember what Buzz Aldrin's nickname was? Apart from Buzz, I imagine his name wasn't Buzz, but do you ever remember his nickname?
yeah, you mean what his call sign was?
No, no, just his nickname.
Oh
Uh,
no,
his nickname was Doctor Rendezvous
Dr.
because of all
Rendezvous.
the interesting. Well, like the spaceship went up and then had to come apart, and then and they then had to redock. I'm not real sure of the logistics, and but apparently he had a brain that just perfectly understands things moving around in space. Because I said to this young man, one of the things with that pilot, he must have really good spatial awareness.
Hmm.
And so Buzz Aldrin must have had that in spades, to be able to do that.
You know, funny you should say that. So my very first flight was in an F4, not an A4. In the A4, they offered that too, but I had already left the A4s and went to the F4s by the time I was, qualified to go in the back seat. So my
Mm.
very first flight was in the back seat of an F4, and they call it a familiarization or FAM flight.
Yeah.
And so they take you up and they do all kinds of, aerobatic maneuvers. And you got two jet engines strapped on, and this guy up in the front seat, and you can't see what he's doing.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And the F4, the sides of the F4, when you're sitting in the seat, you sit low. If
Yeah.
you ever look at a picture of an F4, the guy in the back is sitting real low in that F4. You can really, if you see a picture of a guy in the back seat, you usually just see his neck and his head. That's
I thought
about
that
all
was
you
just because Tom Cruise was short. Now I know why.
yeah, yeah. No, he was never in an F4 though. He did the F14 in and I don't know what it's like in the F14. That's
Uh,
Navy thing, but he was in the F18 this last time. But
okay.
so we were out doing this, and you're not born with spatial awareness. You
Oh,
know,
really?
it's because we live in this world where we're on the ground and we're looking forward, and we can look right and we can look up, but we can't look down.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because the ground's there.
Yeah.
When you're in the fourth dimension,
Oh, okay. Wow.
uh, yeah.
Now
So
I
it's
get it. Yeah, yeah. That's very interesting. Mm.
yeah. So
Mm. Wow. Yeah, that's
so
very, very
initially
interesting.
yeah.
Never occurred to
So
me.
or me either until that time.
Yeah.
And so he would do all these things, and I got disoriented about
Oh,
what
okay.
where we were at.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
but as the hours, as the more flights that I had, and you actually get used to. And the first one, I was real nauseous. I thought, man, I'm not going to be able to do this, because my stomach doesn't know if I'm up or if I'm side, and so it gets real nauseous and you want to throw up.
Yeah.
But you get used to that as well.
Mm.
And I think some people don't get used to it, but most people, get used to it. But then you become aware of that other dimension that you
Mm.
don't have
That is
when
such,
you're
yeah, I'm so glad you told us that because that's
yeah.
completely eluded me. I know that in those planes that they have computers or they have, look, yeah, I'm an idiot at this sort of stuff, so I know I'm not using the right words, but I know that with the headset, because there's cameras fixed to the other side of the plane, when they look down, they're effectively looking through the plane,
Yeah.
like the plane's not there. They can just look down and see what's underneath them.
Yeah, that's the F-30. That's the new airplane. We didn't have none of that in
Mm,
the late 70s.
mm,
So the late 70s, we went so my flying time ended in 1982. We transitioned from the F4 to the F18, and the F18
mm,
only had one seat. And
mm,
you mentioned the computers, then it had three computer screens in
mm.
there, and it was the first airplane that I am aware of that even had a moving map. So
Ah, yeah,
as the plane flew, the map would, I mean, it's
yeah,
we're all used to it now because we have
yeah.
it in our car. But in 82, that was some secret squirrel stuff going on there. Um, but the F4 didn't have that. It was all analog,
Mm,
they did have a little bit of up front, some computer, just like a submarine might have to do, uh, to get solutions on shots and embalming and things like that, and it would show up
ah,
on a screen in front of them looking
ah,
through the windshield, and it's called a HUD, heads up display.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so when the F-18 came along, it had a lot more sensors on it, and so the pilot didn't need a guy in the back seat anymore. You know,
Ah, ah.
one guy could do the job of two,
Mm.
and
What is
so yeah,
what's the origins of the expression fly by the seat of your pants? Or do you know that expression?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What does
So
that
that's
mean?
Well, it means that you're looking outside, you're not looking at instruments, and
Oh,
you're literally flying by the so in your ear you have this fluid in your ear
hmm
canals.
hmm
So what keeps you walking and balanced is your ears, believe it or not. It's not your body. When people say they have vertigo, they'll bump into things and they can't walk straight. They don't know if they're leaning or if they're not leaning. It's
Oh,
because of the canals in their ears.
amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing, and there's a lot of plane wrecks because of that, because a pilot would maybe lose situational awareness.
Yeah,
Maybe he goes and flies in the cloud, so he can't see the
yeah,
horizon, and
yeah,
he won't know if he's upside down or not. You
yeah.
know,
There's a really horrible thing that happened in the Antarctic quite a long time ago. There was a cruise, a passenger plane, and it flew into a mountain in the Antarctic. It was done on a pleasure cruise, sightseeing cruise, and the pilot lost, I'd say there might be that situational awareness. And there was a mountain called Mount Erebus,
mm,
and the plane just flew into it because it looked flat.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, like there was just an icy landscape and the mountain was full of ice. Effectively, he didn't see it. He must
yeah.
not have
He
been
probably
using
didn't.
his instruments.
Yeah,
He just flew
and
into
that's
the
the whole
side of the
thing.
mountain.
Yeah. They'll fight the feeling that they'll think the instruments are wrong,
Ah,
you know,
right, yeah. Mm.
because of the way their ears are,
Mm. When
they're,
Yeah, I had a friend of mine here. He's since moved off the island, but he had I think it was called an ultralight aircraft,
yeah.
and you could sit
I had one
inside
of
it.
those too.
You've got one.
Yeah, I used to have
Ah,
one. I don't have
yeah,
one anymore.
yeah. Well, in this plane, you could carry two passengers, and but you were sitting inside a pretty makeshift, you know, what would you call it, a cockpit? Anyway,
Yeah, a
but
little pod.
My friend Jim, I didn't know it at the time, but we were flying over our farm, and he was flying over it, and then he was doing different turns and stuff, and it was only late. I did that with him twice, and anyway, Jim said to someone else later, might have been weeks later, he said you can't scare Pete. He said I was trying to scare him. He was just sitting there nice and calm. I didn't know he was trying to scare me. Anyway, I just had a lot of confidence in him. But yeah, the funny thing was, and Jim won't mind me saying this, that Jim's a big boy. Oh, you might say he's a he's a good old boy. He must weigh
Yeah.
about 120 kilos, which is pretty
Oh,
heavy. Like
how,
120 kilos. Yeah,
what is that?
he's a big man. Anyway, and he said to me before we took off on his farm, because he had an airstrip and a hangar on his farm, and he said to me, how much do you weigh, Pete? And I said, about 88 kilos. Anyway, we got up into the air, and Jim's a pretty jovial sort of a bloke. But when we got up into the air, he looked at me in a very deadpan voice. He said, "You're heavier than you think." And I thought, bloody hell, mate, have you looked at yourself lately? I thought it was a bit cheeky. Like, I've always been fairly, an athletic build. Anyway.
120 kilos is
There's
264.
2.2 pounds for every kilo. So if your maths is any good, you can
Yes,
2.2.
264 pounds.
So yeah, that's the
200.
other interesting thing I noticed about Americans. When we had the imperial system, we used to talk in pounds and stones. So you don't use the
Yeah.
word stone, do you?
Uh-uh.
So there
No.
was 14 pounds to every stone. There's 16 ounces to a pound, and then there's 14 pounds to every stone. So I would say, I weigh 14 stone six, which would mean, 6 pounds, ounces. But you don't, yeah, you guys just talk in pounds. You don't worry about
No, we'd have
ounces.
to.
You don't talk
Yeah.
in stone, sorry. Yeah.
No, we'd have to learn math if we had to do that. And that's,
No,
who wants to
but
do
are you
that?
familiar with the word stone, as in
Yeah.
weight?
Yes, I
Yeah.
know there's some people that use that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that,
Yeah. Yeah, it was 14
somebody
pounds.
said, somebody said they weighed 14 stones. I'm like, well, just speak in pounds, man. Why do you want me to add up how much you weigh? Just tell me how much you weigh.
Um, so one of the questions that I had on my channel was from a Tasmanian I think a retired Tasmanian police officer, and I think maybe his wife was also the same, but about retention rates within the police. And reading between the lines that this man was concerned about people leaving before they're in the job very long. And he referenced what you said, and he said Mike said that he's no one that he's not special or words to that effect, and actually didn't agree with what you said that Mike is special, and anyone that spent more than 5 minutes or 5 seconds in your company knows that. And I know what you mean that, but so and I was thinking about that this morning when I was milking the cow, and so some of the thoughts that I had about retention rates is that I know that when I was at the academy doing our initial training, so we used to have to parade morning and afternoon. There's 210 of us go onto the parade ground, and in the New South Wales Police they do that about 4 times a year. Yeah, that sort of intake. So it's about around 1,000 every year. Anyway, but what I noticed was the first 2 weeks we were there, we just wore our civilian clothes. After that, you get a uniform, but within those first few days of being down there, when you were answering your name, so that the person in every there was a subclass of about 20, and there would be a person for that week that would be in charge of the class. So that might be you, righto? You're
Hmm.
at the front, and you say Peter Gillett, and I would answer, but I had to answer to the senior ranking person on the parade ground, which is generally a senior constable. Righto? They're the ones you're just dead scared of. They're the big fearsome dudes. You're just scared of them.
Hmm.
If they're sergeant, and so the answer would be senior, righto? But if a sergeant walked onto the parade ground, you had to be very eagle-eyed. It was sergeant. But one time there was a superintendent, which is a fairly senior commissioned rank. And so you go, sir, when your name is called. But this particular day, I'd only been down there a few days, and he's walking on the parade ground and he's walking around inspecting the troops. And he comes past me, and he had a go at me about the length of my hair, and really bawled me out. And I said, well, every week there was a barber would come to the parade, come to the academy, you can go and get your hair cut. Anyway, and I said to him, well, I'm seeing the barber tomorrow. That wasn't good enough. I remember thinking, go away, you dill, like just run away. But I couldn't understand why. But now I understood. They're actually testing you, for your durability on the street when you've got a bunch of drunken fools or you're dealing with some serious crook. That they're testing
Yeah.
you, and so it was a very good thing to do. So I think that's part of sifting, like seeing who's tough enough. If you're not tough enough, then you just bail out.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good thing. You want
Mm,
to test them uh under fire, but
mm, mm, mm.
do you want to, no one can simulate you being fired at. No one can simulate
No.
you
Mm,
because in police academy, as you know, you go through all these scenarios and you act them out with
mm,
your, how the instructors will have you act out, and and you watch other people act out too. So you're gauging, but those people are just as new as you are and have never been in police force.
mm,
So I
mm,
think the instructors have to instill in some type of rank structure
mm,
and stress these students out to see if they're going to crumble. And you and I both, we've known police officers that under high stress situations, they cease to operate. You
mm,
can't,
mm.
like the old movies where you slap them in the face. We
Yeah.
didn't do that, but we might holler them, hey man, get your shit together. We got to go do this.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so I think it's a good thing for them to do that on the parade ground
mm,
or anywhere else. We didn't have uniforms when I went to the academy. I mean, we had I guess, a simulation of a uniform for the academy that I went to, but I mean, you kind of looked up to those guys who were instructors because,
mm,
those guys were our instructors, and it may have been this way with you. that was a collateral duty for those guys. Those guys were actually police officers, 5 days a week or whatever it is. And then when they had to come in and teach a subject like burglary, for instance, part of of
Mm,
the law, we call it a penal code, but y'all would call it something else maybe. But
mm,
those guys would, that would be their day off, or they took a
ah,
couple hours off. So they were true police officers, and that instilled a bunch of respect for
mm.
us to, I mean, here's guys that are doing it.
One of the things they used to do, and they still do it at the police academy here, is that they would get coppers like me to go down there for a 2 week stint at a time.
Yeah,
And I used to
yeah,
love doing it because they had a scenario village, or there is a scenario village down at the academy. It's got a house, it's got a hotel, it's got a bus station,
yep.
and maybe other things. And so there'd be the students role playing, like you said, and they would get police like me, and we would assess them. And it was I loved doing it. I tried to be as helpful as I could. There was only one time I was fairly critical of a fellow, and I didn't approach him personally, but I spoke to the instructors. I said, "Look, this bloke's no good," And they said, "It's
Mhm.
very interesting you said that because you're not the first one." And by the end of that week, he was gone.
Was another student,
Yeah, another student. Yeah,
another cadet. Yeah.
yeah. And he was told, "Mate, you can't stay. You got to go." But I think that was a great thing to be able to. I really didn't like it when you first got there because we would go down. We have our own truck, and we'll go down there. We'd have to wear our gun, and they were really super nice, like super. You might say obsequious, towards us.
Yeah.
Because when we got there, you'd have to go and put your gun in the safe, but they, oh, it was. I didn't really like it. We're saying you this and saying you that. It's, settle
Yeah.
down, mate. You know?
Yeah, because when you're on the street, no one cares. You're just a copper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So the retention. I mean, so you're the guy from Tasmania, and by the way, thanks for the kind words from this police officer or former police officer from
Mm,
Tasmania. I
mm,
appreciate it.
mm,
So retention rate. I think every police department struggles with that. And for
mm,
us, we weren't losing predominantly, we didn't lose police officers because they stopped being police officers. We lost police officers to other cities or other states
okay.
that
Yeah.
paid more,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and you got, as as well as I do, it's all about the money,
Yeah.
you know.
Uh,
So and it's hard until you get your foot in the door one time. Once you get hired at a police department,
mm,
then you're able to get hired at it's really
mm,
simple,
mm,
but it takes you forever. I was fortunate. I was lucky. They offered me a job before I was looking for a job.
mm, mm,
But I know people that even went to the academy with me that never could get a job as a police officer. They
mm,
for whatever reason,
mm,
uh, so retention for us, especially with the young guys, if they're serving in a city that uh, is not very exciting, they're just dealing with loud noise calls or barking dog or you know illegal parking, things like that. That's not very exciting for a 30-year-old police officer. He
mm,
wants to get into Dallas PD and go bust
mm,
heads and and do the
mm,
mono e mono. Am I good enough to survive
mm,
this?
mm, mm,
So they are looking for higher paid jobs and a place where they have upward mobility. Dallas might offer SWAT, they might offer, homicide detective and narcotics and things like that. Whereas smaller departments, they don't have all these uh,
mm.
things. And
That
that's what these young guys want to do.
that does happen in Australia. Like there was always other states competing. They would say, "Oh, come to the Northern Territory and this much money and free housing or whatever it might be." But I mean, it's very different because in Australia there's only 8 jurisdictions. Yeah, the
Yeah,
whole country. So it's not that. But I know from probably a financial point of view was that yeah, it must be a lot of money that a state would save by having you come to ours because we don't have to train you. You're
that's
already very
another.
experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think that from what the general impression I get, Mike, from your country is that it's far more sympathetic towards police that are getting out. There's something like a 20-year retirement plan already set
Yeah.
in place. So you're nodding to that, yeah, yeah. And in
Yeah. I
Australia, it's
mean,
not like that. We don't. There's nothing like that in Australia. I've heard some deplorable. I won't mention his name, but he's a good friend of mine. Two really good friends of mine, who just found out on the day that because they were both had injuries, and they found out that very day, today's your last day in the job. That's
mm,
disgraceful.
yeah, that wouldn't
These are
happen
people
here.
that have got like 20 something year veterans. That's disgraceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. No, that wouldn't happen here at
Mm.
all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we're pretty fortunate. I didn't know y'all didn't have, do you not have a 20-year
No,
retirement plan?
no, forget about it. Mate,
Do you have a retirement?
we are treated like flotsam and jetsam. You know,
Really?
I can't, my experience was fairly positive, the way that I was boarded out, but my experience would be unusual. Most of them aren't good. You're
So
treated like absolute trash.
so when they retire out of New South Wales, for instance,
Mm.
what's what's their nest egg? Do they, I mean, it's only something that they've been able to put
Depends.
behind?
Depends on when you joined, and there's this whole thing about pre-88, meaning 1988. If you're pre-88, there was much better financial settlement. I mean, for example, when I got out, and I had to get out, but I was able to I was able to cash in my superannuation, and
What is
which
that?
sounds like a lot of money. Like I got a check for a considerable amount of money, um, but that means I got no superannuation too. I mean, I just went and bought property.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't owe anybody anything. I own, two houses and, everything that I've got I own, but I've got to look after myself. That's why I slaughter cows and feed ourselves. Yeah, anyway, it's not very good, Mike, in
So you don't get
Australia.
a check every month from the state or anything like that.
I do, but it's next to
Oh, okay.
nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's hardly worth talking about. Yeah. But anyway, I'm
Yeah.
not complaining. I guess I think one of the things to answer this man's question is about retention rates is that I think some of the reason that police departments, to use your expression, they bank on the fact that people join the police because they're community minded, they're civic minded. Yeah, we would call it in this country, God, King, and country type people. But I know that that if most people, as you would know, when they see police on the street, they don't actually look at their rank on their shoulder. All they see is police. They're watching the news, they
Mhm.
see police. I always look at the rank. And it's very, very unusual if you see in say in Sydney, and there's a big, there's a lot of police on the street. Most of them have just got one stripe, which means they're fairly junior. Very, very
Okay.
rarely do you see two stripes and a bar. Two stripes and a bar means you've done more than 10 years. Mate, nah, not good. Fairly
Mm.
junior police. You end up with a fairly junior police force.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
experienced.
So are your experience are leaving?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that is a difference between Australia and the U.S. Um, because you want to have a retirement no matter what job you have. You want to work for, eventually you're not going to be able to work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Uh, so the Marine Corps, the military for us, there's a 20-year retirement there.
Mm, mm,
So I retired at 38 years old from the Marine
mm,
Corps, and I've been getting a check ever since then. And I'm
mm,
66
mm,
now. Yeah, I've
mm,
been getting a check longer than I was actually in. So
mm,
that's one
mm,
thing. It's not enough to live on,
mm,
but it's like $2,700 a month.
mm, mm,
It's not chicken feed,
mm.
you know,
Yeah.
but I went on and was able to go to another career, and which
Mm,
was the police
mm,
department,
mm,
and they have a 20-year
mm.
retirement
That
as
is so
well.
much more humane, so much
Yeah,
better.
I mean, I wouldn't work if there wasn't something, and because everybody works here for that retirement. We're not.
Mm,
Yes, we want to serve our fellow man. Don't get me wrong,
mm.
but there's going to come a time to where, especially in police, that you're too old to be out there duking it out with these,
Well,
the meth heads.
after in the New South Wales Police, after 60, you cannot be on the street. You
And
can
I think
stay
that's a
in,
good
but you
idea.
won't be out on the street. No, I mean, why in the hell would you want to be? You know,
That's, that's right.
60
Well,
years
your
old.
brain says you can still do it, but your body says you can't.
Yeah, and the body talks pretty loud. Well, no matter what I do, Mike, it wouldn't matter if I was cutting firewood or I was in the coppers. I want to know, am I halfway through yet? If I'm doing a job, doesn't matter what it is, I want to know, am I halfway through yet? Because that
Yeah, it's a
means
good
I can
analogy.
I can set aside the energy to get it done. Whether I'm cleaning the house or I'm cutting
Yeah.
firewood, what's the halfway mark here?
In,
Mm.
in the in the
In the
police
coppers,
department,
it's not like that. You got no idea.
you don't know when
No,
they're going to say, "All right,
no,
your day is
no
done.
idea. No, I've
Thank
seen
you."
it. I mean, it makes me. You can see I'm pretty upset about it, or angry, or animated about it. But some of the things to answer this man's question about retention is that people often talk about the disrespect that police get from the members of the public. Well, to be plain, I don't really have a lot of experience with that. I found most members of the public more than respectful towards me. Yeah, and pleasing. The disrespect that I remember seeing was from police further up the scale, like bosses, what we would call bosses, being disrespectful to us. Yeah,
Yeah.
I found that to be horrible. I don't mean in a warranted way. They shouldn't be being nasty to me. Yeah, I'll give you an example. I spent 6 years and 8 months in Dubbo, and I was one of the hardest working. I'm not banging myself up here. I was one of the hardest working police there. Even the local magistrate recognised that. And when I finished up after 6 years and 8 months in Dubbo, which is a really tough spot, the superintendent there, he only ever spoke to me once personally. I was walking past him in the corridor and he said to me, make sure you've got all your correspondence, meaning paperwork, up to date. Don't make me come looking for you. And I just
Mm,
said, yes, sir.
yeah.
He should have been far more amicable towards me than that. That
Oh
was
yeah.
pretty horrible.
He should have been thankful, you
Yeah,
know.
thankful. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
As
made him
as
look
a,
good.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm.
Uh, so when I was in the Marine Corps, I had 144 people that worked for me.
Wow.
All those, all the, yeah. When
Ah,
I retired,
ah,
I was ahead of everybody in the maintenance department when I retired. 144 people, and we won all kinds of awards,
mm,
military awards, far as readiness and things like that.
mm,
But it wasn't me. I mean, I
mm,
got the
mm.
spotlight,
Yeah,
but it was those guys,
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And man, I was telling, I used to tell people, God blessed me for my staff that
Mm,
came to work. But I recognized the fact that it wasn't it wasn't me. Without those people
mm, mm,
doing what they did,
mm,
uh, it
mm.
could have been totally different.
So you are a
But
very special man, Mike. To be able to say
oh
that, that means you're self-effacing, you're humble, and you know that you ride on the shoulders of other people. That's a great
yeah,
thing to say. Mm,
yeah, I never lose sight of, my what you brought up about people respecting or disrespecting the police officers. So when I grew up, we're all the same age. Me, you, and Wade. Within a
mm,
couple of years, we're all the same age.
mm,
Uh, and I can speak for Southeast Oklahoma, and probably here in Texas. But we
mm,
were taught at a young age that police officers were to be respected.
mm, mm,
Firemen
mm.
were to be respected.
Yeah, yeah.
When if you were in second grade, and the teacher would say, go, to everybody in the class, says, what do you want to be when you grow up? Half
Mm,
the boys in there would want to be police officers, and half of them want to be firefighters.
yeah,
Um, and the girls always
yeah,
wanted to be nurses or
yeah,
teachers.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But we were taught to respect the police officer, so the police wasn't my first choice. The Marine Corps. I knew I wanted to be a Marine from the time I was 8 years old, and
Oh,
and that
how
is
wonderful.
not a
Yeah.
lie. I knew it That's what I
mm,
want to do. If
mm.
I had what it took, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't know until you go through if you have what it takes.
Uh,
But but I knew that if I had what it took and they accepted me, that my first choice is I wanted to be a United States Marine. I heard, hey, I watched all the movies. I knew they were the hardest and the best service in the world, you know.
mm, mm,
So I wanted to be that,
mm,
Iwo Jima. I mean, just, all the propaganda that the Marine Corps puts out, which I'm part of it. But so police was my second choice after a long career in the Marine Corps.
mm, mm,
And when I became a police officer, uh I was 37, I think, when I 36 or 37 when I was licensed as a police officer. I still had 2 years before I retired from the Marine Corps. But I never, from the time I put on that badge and went to work, I would say 99.999% of the people that I came in contact
mm,
were respectful, but I
mm,
was also respectful to them.
mm, mm.
I don't care what they
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
charged with.
Mm,
I was going to treat them with respect.
mm,
I mean, you could buck that, if you were
mm,
a bad guy.
mm,
Once I got you in cuffs, you're in cuffs, and I'm going to treat you like a good human,
mm,
if you allow me to.
mm,
Even when I would handcuff somebody that, did a felony and
mm,
they got caught, they would say, uh, they would still treat me with respect. Even I'm
mm.
taking them to jail. They're
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
car.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but they knew that this wasn't personal for me. This
Mm.
was my
We
calling.
we had at Dubbo Police Station. We had to deal with a fairly high volume lot of prisoners, and sometimes there was just a whole bunch of prisoners would come in, and I would have to process them. Part of my job was processing the prisoners. And there was one fellow who essentially was illiterate. He was a very like a nicely spoken man, but he had the most beautiful handwriting, and it
Mhm.
just didn't fit with his generation. He would have only been in his 20s. And I was so taken with the way that he could write his name. Anyway, and I said to him, mate, you should be down in Sydney doing some sort of artwork. You're quite a talented fellow. Anyway, the next time he came through, as they always do, or almost always do, and
Yeah,
he remembered me. And we had a nice favourable connection simply because, I suppose you might say I cared enough to see him as an individual.
yeah.
And
And why
that
shouldn't you,
that
right?
speaks volumes, doesn't it, about how to get along with people. I've locked up people for drug matters, one of the places I was stationed at. And, someone gave me some information that this fellow's he just scored a reasonable amount of dope. And so I rang, I worked on my own. I rang up the head station and said, look, this is what I got. And they said, well, do you want to get a search warrant? I said, look, I don't really think I'm going to need a search warrant. And they said, look, we'll send out a couple of other police to help you. Just it's all corroborated. So I went round to this bloke's house and knocked on his door, said, mate, I believe you got this. He said, yeah, Pete. He said, invited me into his house and here it is. So I took possession of it, charged him, and he was convicted. But the next time I was down the hotel and I was building a garden, veggie garden, he said, I got some timber at home you can have to build up the garden, Pete. Yeah, nothing personal, just doing my
Yeah.
job, you know.
Yeah, and he's probably embarrassed even, once they sober up, then they're
Mm.
embarrassed of what their actions were because they have memory of what they
Yeah.
what they've done, and they're embarrassed that, they were weak and partaked and became
Mm,
a junkie or whatever, and
mm,
they're embarrassed to face you, because you are
mm,
a symbol of authority.
mm,
Um, that there's and I've we need to get way to figure out how to play it. There's a guy that talks up here. He's passed on now, but he talks about police.
mm,
It's just a short thing, and he describes, that you're supposed to be a father as a police officer. You have to act sometimes as somebody's clergy.
mm,
Sometimes you're their best friend. I mean,
mm,
you and I both know we've been at accidents where we know this person's not going to make it, but they're still
mm,
alive.
mm,
And we're telling them, we're the last voice that they hear. You
mm,
know,
mm,
So then we have to be their
mm,
confidant. Maybe they
mm,
want to get something off their chest because they know they're dying, and or tell my
mm,
family I love them or something like that.
mm.
So police officers a lot more than just a badge,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
I don't, yeah,
Mm,
I think most people don't realize, uh, yeah, there's a lot of police officers say, "Hey, I'm just doing my job," but that job is so all encompassing that it's hard to put all that on. Sometimes you have to give a teddy bear to a child whose parents are been hurt, arrested, whatever, and you know those type of things I think is what separates police officers from normal people, because normal people would do that one day and they wouldn't want to do it a second time,
And that goes back to the question about retention rates. And perhaps to answer that man's question is to do that. You have to become, in a sense, quite comfortable with being deeply involved in someone else's life.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and I remember feeling a little bit awkward doing probably my first search warrant. And the person's there, you're in the house and you're going through the house. That just feels awkward.
yeah.
But you got to
Going
get
through
over
the
that,
door.
and so sometimes that I don't know whether it's answering the question or not, but sometimes people just go, I just don't want to be that involved in someone else's life. And I know that you're like it, I'm like it. I'm fairly now in my life, I'm reasonably reserved.
Yeah,
I just pulled back. It's probably why I live on King Island on a farm on King Island and reinvented myself. I've had enough of being involved in other people's lives. But then again, I'm a pretty sociable person. It's not like I've been burnt.
yeah.
Anyway,
I think you carry those ghosts with you, you
yeah,
know.
of course,
But
yeah, and
what I was trying to get at is that more people will remember you and your legacy than you'll remember of somebody else.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so if you can bring a little comfort to somebody when
mm,
it's their worst day, to
mm,
you it's just another day. To
yeah,
them, it might be
yeah,
their worst day of their life, and
mm,
you brought some
mm,
kind of comfort to them. I think
mm,
that says more for a police officer than putting handcuffs on somebody or
yeah.
taking
That's
somebody to
the
jail.
easy part, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the easy part.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that
absolutely.
this man that asked us the question, I think he used the word sift or getting rid of people that aren't quite up to scratch. But I think that when you that you have to have resolve. You have to have a strong backbone. You have to have resolve. If that resolve means then you're going to get locked up, then you're going to get locked up.
Yeah,
You can't
yeah,
be wishy-washy about it. And I know I'm in my life like that animal that got slaughtered at my place yesterday. I don't sleep well the night before. I don't like that, but I know that that's what happens.
yeah,
But you got to have a resolve about that, and you got to get things fixed. Mm.
yeah. I think mentally. So I don't think I've ever told this on this podcast. Probably never told it to anybody outside my immediate family. I'm almost sure of it because I mean it's really nobody else's business. But talking to another fellow police officer, I can't go to sleep without medication.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
uh, my brain is too active. And when I say medication, I don't mean something that a doctor prescribes, but
Mm.
there's some people will drink a shot of whiskey. For me, there's a an over the counter liquid. It's called ZQuil, or
Mm.
there's another one too, but it's just got some melatonin in it, or
That's what I
what.
take. I use melatonin a fair bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Mm.
or I won't be able to go to sleep. And I'll sit there. Sometimes I'll forget at night, and I'll be sitting
Mm.
there and I'm like, why can't I go to sleep? Because
Mm.
so many
Mm.
things are rushing through my head.
Mm.
And but that's because of the lifestyle that I chose
Mm.
to have, and serving my fellow man.
Yeah.
We're retired, you're retired,
Mm.
but we'll never be able to uh there won't be a day that, like I've said before, that those ghosts,
Mm.
not even that. I'll go ahead and say it that, we've talked about it before, that we've made mistakes. Maybe we've made a wrong call
Mm.
or something like that.
Yeah,
I
I
told you
should
about,
have.
I told you about the chop chop thing, you know,
Uh,
uh, so we'll replay those probably to the
mm,
day we
mm,
die. You
mm,
know,
yeah.
we cause somebody some kind of pain or whatever. And
Mm,
I don't think most people realize that cops who will do this for a long time,
mm.
we have a big catalog of these ghosts, good and bad, I
I
mean,
think that, yeah, I used to think that I probably lived about 1,000 years. All the experiences that I've had, we're the equivalent of maybe 1,000 years of someone else's life, and it's not something you'd want to visit on anybody. But it's just about our time, Mike. The producer's just given me the 5 minute signal. I wanted to finish on a funny story, but is that okay? I
yeah,
hadn't been
yeah.
in the police very long, and my daughter, my gorgeous darling daughter Erin, had me come along to her school. She was only very young, might have only been in about second or third class. And you have show and tell. You know
Hmm.
what that means? Yeah, but I
Yeah.
was her show and tell. Anyway, so I felt like a big goose, go along to school, put on my uniform, go up there, and the teacher introduces me. Then you get questions, and then the usual questions. Have you ever shot anybody? No, I haven't shot anybody. And I hope not to. But then there's a kid, I could still see him. There's a kid up the back of the classroom. He put his hand up. Oh, what's your question, son? He goes, no question. He just goes, my dad's in jail for manslaughter.
Oh.
Okay, let's move on. Any other questions? Quick.
Yeah, we were fortunate our parents, I last story, and then we'll get off here for Wade.
Uh,
But so, and correct me if I've told this story before,
mm,
but what I just told you, more people remember us than we remember them because we go from person to person. So a friend of mine and I who served in the Marine Corps together, also on the same police force together,
mm.
took vacation, and we had Harley Davidsons, and we were going to ride from Texas all the way up to Colorado to Pikes Peak.
That's a
Just
long way, is it?
it's a long way.
Yeah.
It's a 2 day ride,
Mm.
one way. you know, and so we were probably, I'm going to say Amarillo is 6 hours away. Let's just say that. And we were getting fuel at the gas pumps, and it was, there might have been 30 gas pumps at this. It's a big gas station,
Wow.
and we were getting fuel, and this guy walked out of the gas station, a convenience store gas station,
Mm.
and he made a beeline to me. He goes, "You're a cop down in Midlothian, Texas, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm 6 hours away from home."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I have one, but so I'm thinking, oh my God, this is gonna go down right here in this parking lot.
No.
And I said, yeah, that I sure am. He goes, yeah, you pulled me over. I said, I did. He goes, yeah, you pulled me over for speeding. I said, did I give you a ticket? He said, no. I'm like, hey, brother, how you doing? you know, but the thing is you're going to leave a legacy to
Mm,
everybody you come in contact with as a
mm,
cop.
mm.
So leave a good legacy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't cost you a penny to give them a
Mm,
smile, tell them
mm,
thank you, be courteous to them.
mm, mm,
When they're feeling down, if they had a bad day, you talk to
mm,
them. Hey,
mm,
brother, I know you're having a bad day. I know you weren't thinking about me out here as a
mm,
police officer trying to pull you over for speeding. You were thinking about getting your kids' ball game.
mm,
Your boss has
mm,
been on your ass. I understand all that. I'm
mm,
not gonna I'm not gonna waste your time anymore. Just do me a
mm,
favor and slow down and
mm.
have a good day. That guy will remember that long after. If
Yeah.
I would have wrote him a ticket, he would have
Mm,
forgot that and just said some asshole cop wrote me a ticket.
mm,
But he'll remember
mm.
you being good to him on a day that nobody else was. So
Beautiful. Great.
yeah,
That's a good
yeah.
way to end it. All right. Thanks so much for your time again, Mike. And
You too.
I'm sorry. I'm apologise to Mrs. Jones for taking Mike away again.
I'm gonna
Anyway,
take her to get something to eat here in a minute. I'll make it up to her.
right. Okay. Thanks, mate.
Yeah.